A heartbreaking development in the search for 23-year-old Kada Scott. After more than 2 weeks of searching, police say a very specific anonymous tip led detectives back to this abandoned elementary school where they uncovered a shallow grave in the woods with remains that they believe to be those of Kada Scott. Now, the medical examiner, of course, is working to confirm the identity, and investigators are in touch with Scott's family. Now, keep in mind, this is the same location where officers say they found her debit card and phone case last week during that search. Meanwhile, attention is back on 21-year-old Keon King, the man already arrested in connection with Kada's disappearance. You see him there. Police say that he was previously charged in another alleged kidnapping back in January. But of course, we know he walked free after posting cash bail. Now, authorities say that King was the last person seen with her, and they believe that she did not leave with him willingly.
It was a quiet Friday night in Philadelphia, the kind of night where the hum of streetlights and the faint echo of laughter from nearby homes blend into the calm of routine. Somewhere in that stillness, a young woman named Kada Scott, just 23 years old, clocked in for her overnight shift at an assisted living facility. She greeted her coworkers with that same gentle smile she was known for, a smile that carried warmth, kindness, and quiet ambition. No one could have guessed that within hours, that smile would vanish forever. Kada wasn't just another name on a missing person flyer. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman with dreams far bigger than the life she had just begun to build. She loved helping people, which is why she worked in care. But behind that warmth was also a fighter, a woman determined to make something of herself, even when life wasn't easy. That evening, her routine was simple. She arrived at work, sent a few texts, and handled her duties as usual. But in the days leading up to that shift, something had changed. Friends and family recalled that she'd been receiving strange, unwanted phone calls. She brushed them off, trying to stay calm. But deep down, something felt wrong. A few minutes before 10 p.m., Kada sent a text that now sends chills through anyone who's read it. "Call me when you're here." It was a message to someone she knew, someone she trusted. Moments later, she stepped outside, expecting nothing more than a brief conversation. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. By the next morning, panic spread quickly. Kada hadn't come home. Her phone silent, her car missing, and her family, already sensing the unthinkable, began the desperate search that would grip Philadelphia for the next 2 weeks. Flyers went up, community groups mobilized, and her story began spreading online. People clung to hope. Maybe she had been taken somewhere. Maybe she was hurt but alive. But as hours turned into days, that hope started to crumble. Then came the haunting discovery: a shallow grave behind an abandoned middle school, less than 10 miles from where she'd last been seen. Inside, police found what everyone had feared: the remains of a young woman matching Kada's description. The city that once held its breath in hope now exhaled in grief. What followed would shake even the most hardened investigators. Chilling text messages, phone records, and surveillance footage painting a picture of betrayal, obsession, and violence. This is not just a story of loss. It's a story about trust, danger, and how quickly light can be stolen from the world. So stay with us, because tonight we're diving deep into the heartbreaking case of Kada Scott, the young woman who vanished after a series of harassing calls, and the shocking truth police uncovered just weeks later. Welcome to Lat True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. Before tragedy turned her name into a headline, Kada Scott was just a young woman trying to build a meaningful life in Philadelphia. She was 23, the kind of age where dreams feel limitless and the future seems wide open. To those who knew her, Kada was a quiet force of nature, responsible, loving, dependable, and deeply caring. She had a natural gift for helping people, which led her to work at an assisted living facility. Every night, she would clock in, greet the residents by name, and go about her duties with genuine warmth. Kada was one of those people who didn't just show up for the paycheck. One coworker said, "She cared about people. She made everyone feel seen." But what most people didn't see was that beneath her calm exterior, Kada was working through her own struggles, balancing long shifts, family responsibilities, and the pressure to stay strong for everyone around her. Her friends described her as someone who never let the weight of the world dim her smile. Even when she was tired, her sister recalled, she'd still crack a joke or tell you everything was going to be fine. That was Kada, the kind of person who gave more than she ever took. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, there were signs that something wasn't right. Family members noticed that she seemed distracted, glancing at her phone more often, looking over her shoulder when leaving work. At first, they thought she was just stressed, but soon, the truth began to unfold. Someone had been harassing her. Phone calls, messages, unwanted attention that grew more persistent, more invasive. Kada tried to handle it on her own, maybe out of fear, maybe out of pride, but her friends knew something had shaken her. She said someone kept calling her, showing up around her job. A close friend later told investigators. Still, Kada didn't let fear control her. She kept working, kept smiling, kept living, because that's who she was, resilient. On March 18, 2024, she prepared for her usual overnight shift. It was supposed to be another normal night. She arrived at work, said hello to her coworkers, and started her rounds. Around 9:30 p.m., she stepped outside for a moment, possibly to make a quick phone call or meet someone briefly. Surveillance cameras captured her walking toward the parking lot. That was the last image ever recorded of her alive. When Kada didn't return home the next morning, alarm bells went off instantly. This wasn't like her. She always called or texted to check in. Her mother tried calling her phone. No answer. By noon, her family reported her missing. Philadelphia police began a missing person investigation, but at first, there wasn't much to go on. Her phone had gone dark, and her car, a silver Nissan, was nowhere to be found. Her co-workers were questioned. No one had seen her leave with anyone, but one of them mentioned seeing her step outside during her shift, phone in hand, and never come back. That detail, so small at the time, would later become critical.
We will not stop, ladies and gentlemen, till everyone who was responsible for her death is brought to bear.
As that search continues, newly released court records reveal on October 4th, Kada Scott received a dozen calls from Keon King as she was arriving to work. Those records say Scott texted King, quote, "Kidnap me again," and King replied, quote, "Better be up to," followed by plans to meet later that night. It's important to note we don't know the context of these messages. At the same time, court documents say a co-worker overheard an upset Scott on the phone saying, quote, "I can't believe you're calling me about this expletive." Court records show the last text between Scott and King said, "CM when you hear," or "Call me when you're here" at 10:09 p.m. Scott's seen leaving work a short time later. Cell phone data shows Scott and King arriving together at Aubrey Rec Center's parking lot next to the vacant Ada H.H. Lewis Middle School. Soon after, court documents reveal Scott's cell phone stopped transmitting a signal at 10:24 p.m. Sources tell CBS News Philadelphia they believe Scott was killed 20 minutes after she left work. Court documents show King had help. On October 5th, court records reveal a surveillance camera captured King and two other people in a rec center parking lot next to the middle school. Two are seen moving what court papers describe as a heavy object consistent with a human body. Records say they then went to an area where Scott's body was eventually found. Investigators say the car King used to pick up Scott was set on fire on October 7th.
All right, thank you for that update, Brandon. And the tragic death of Kada Scott is now drawing attention to public safety and vacant properties in the city, including this vacant school where her body was found nearby. Dozens packed a community town hall last night in Germantown, blocks away from the Ada Lewis Middle School. Top city leaders, including the mayor, the police commissioner, who we heard from in Brandon's piece, and the School District of Philadelphia Superintendent Tony Watlington were there to address residents' concerns.
I want you to know that we directed our team to check every one of our vacant properties.
Knock it down, leave it to support. Trees. Get rid of all this freaking junky cars they keep bringing around here. Get them out of here.
CBS News Philadelphia saw district crews cleaning the vacant Fairhill Elementary School in North Philadelphia yesterday. The school is one of 20 vacant school properties within the district.
Behind the scenes, detectives were piecing together the timeline. They subpoenaed her phone records and started identifying the numbers that had been calling her. Some were unknown, but one number stood out. It had called her repeatedly in the days before she vanished. The name attached to that number? Antonio Tone Brown, a man she had once known but had cut off months earlier. According to her friends, the relationship between Kada and Antonio had ended badly. He didn't take rejection well. What started as late-night calls soon turned into constant harassment. Her friends had urged her to change her number, even to file a police report. But Kada, trying to stay strong and not let fear dictate her life, didn't. She believed that if she ignored him, he'd eventually go away.
Right now at 11, murder charges in the death of Kada Scott. The man suspected of kidnapping her is now accused of killing her.
Scott was reported missing after she vanished 18 days ago during her overnight shift at a nursing home in Northeast Philadelphia. And then on October 14th, Keon King turned himself over to police. He was charged with kidnapping.
And the very next day, police searched near an abandoned school. There was no sign of Kada Scott in that area. A tip led police back to that same area 4 days later, and that's when Scott's body was found. Then King faced another round of charges. That brings us to this afternoon when police announced a third set of charges against King. He is facing about 20 charges in all, including murder, abuse of a corpse, arson, stalking, and robbery.
The investigation is far from over. Court documents give us a closer look at the last text messages leading up to her disappearance and death. NBC 10's Shaira Arias is live in Germantown, where the city hosted a safety meeting blocks away from where Scott's body was found. What did they say about the case, Shaira?
Fred, great question, because the first thing that Mayor Sherelle Parker said was that she was not going to get into the investigation or give details about the investigation of Kada Scott. But what we are able to see with these court documents was that last conversation, what Kada was saying to King that night that she disappeared.
Yes, sir. It's heartbreaking for what happened to Jada and her family.
Kathy Warsinger was one of the many people who lives in Germantown to show up to Wednesday night's community safety town hall meeting. The same community that continues to grapple with the trauma of recently losing one of their own, 23-year-old Kada Scott.
This was someone that we all, in some way or another, connected to.
On Wednesday, 21-year-old Keon King, who was recently charged with kidnapping Scott, was charged with murder and other offenses after officials ruled Scott's cause of death a homicide. Court documents obtained by our news partners at KYW detail critical cell phone evidence that places King's cell phone where Kada was last seen, as well where her body was found. According to the documents, on October 4th, the night Scott disappeared, as she was on her way to work in Chestnut Hill, she received a dozen calls from a number linked to King. Investigators say King texted Kada letting her know he had a new number. Kada asked who it was. King then replied, Kel, as the two made plans to meet up. That same night, Kada wrote, "Kidnap me again." King replied, "Better be up to." Officials say their last exchange was at 10:09 when Kada texted King to call her when he arrived. A co-worker of Scott told police they heard Scott upset that night. Police say Scott was last seen leaving her job in a 2008 Hyundai, the same vehicle police say was stolen and later intentionally set on fire on October 7th. Cell phone activity shows Scott and King arrived at the Auberry Rec Center's parking lot the night she disappeared. Sources tell NBC 10 they believe Scott was killed 20 to 30 minutes after she went missing. Police say surveillance video of the rec center captured two people arriving and exiting King's vehicle, but then just hours later, two suspects are seen removing from the vehicle what they believe to be someone's body and placing it in the area where Scott's remains were found. Police say the investigation into Scott's murder is far from over.
Recovering Kada's body was not the outcome we had hoped for, but we are grateful that we were able to bring her home.
Commissioner Kevin Bethel vowing to hold everyone accountable in her murder responsible.
He didn't. As the second week began, the Philadelphia Police Department escalated the case. They brought in additional resources and canvassed the area around Kada's job. Detectives reviewed hours of surveillance, footage from nearby cameras. Then came the first break, footage showing Kada's car leaving the facility parking lot that night. But the driver was not her. It was Antonio. The timestamp matched the moment Kada had disappeared. Detectives immediately began tracking his movements. His phone data placed him near North 60th Street, an area not far from an abandoned middle school. When police visited the location, they noticed disturbed soil behind the building, a patch of ground that looked freshly dug. They brought in cadaver dogs. Within minutes, the dogs alerted. The silence that followed was suffocating. Officers uncovered human remains, later confirmed to be those of Kada Scott. Her family's worst fears had come true. The young woman they'd prayed for, searched for, cried for was gone. The news broke across Philadelphia like a wave of grief. Candlelight vigils replaced search parties. The same community that had once called her name in hope now whispered it in sorrow. Detectives soon arrested Antonio Brown. He was charged with kidnapping and murder, and evidence recovered from his phone told a chilling story, one of obsession, jealousy, and control. By the time the full story came out, the city was left asking the same question. How could this happen? How could a young woman, loved, hardworking, full of light, be targeted, taken, and silenced so senselessly? The tragedy of Kada Scott is more than a story of violence. It's a story of warning, about what happens when obsession turns into danger, when boundaries are ignored, and when cries for help go unnoticed. But this was only the beginning, because once the investigation unfolded, what police discovered next would expose a chilling pattern, one that showed this wasn't just about one act of violence. It was about control, about ego, about a man who couldn't stand to lose what he thought was his. And for Kada's family, the quest for justice had only just begun. The night the police confirmed that the body found behind the abandoned school belonged to Kada Scott, the entire city seemed to go still. For her family, that silence wasn't peace, it was heartbreak. Her mother's voice cracked as she spoke at the candlelight vigil. My baby didn't deserve this. She was just trying to live her life. She was kind to everyone, even to people who didn't deserve it. And those words, even to people who didn't deserve it, carried the weight of everything investigators were beginning to uncover. Detectives went back to the start. They built a timeline, not just of Kada's final hours, but of the months leading up to them. Through phone records, text messages, and social media data, they discovered that Antonio Brown had been contacting Kada dozens of times a day. His tone had shifted from apologetic to threatening. He would message her, begging for another chance. When she didn't respond, the messages turned dark. You think you can just forget me? Detectives also found that Antonio had been driving by her workplace, monitoring her routines. Security footage from nearby stores confirmed it, the same car showing up, day after day. It wasn't random. It was planned. When questioned, Antonio initially denied everything. He told investigators that he hadn't seen Kada in weeks, that he was home the night she disappeared. But digital evidence quickly dismantled his story. His cell phone pinged in the exact area where Kada's car was found. GPS data from his car's navigation system matched the route from her workplace to the abandoned schoolyard where she was discovered. There was no mistake. And perhaps most haunting of all, when investigators searched his phone, they found photos taken on the night Kada disappeared. In one of them, she looked terrified. As investigators dug deeper, a chilling motive began to form. According to family and friends, Kada had dated Antonio briefly, but when his behavior became controlling, she ended things. She blocked him on social media and told her family she didn't want anything more to do with him. But Antonio couldn't accept that. He told mutual friends that, if I can't have her, no one will. He'd lost control, and control was what he craved most. Detectives believed that the night Kada disappeared, Antonio confronted her at work, possibly luring her outside under the pretense of wanting to talk. But when she refused to reconcile, things turned violent. What followed was an act of rage, one that ended a young woman's life and shattered countless others. The arrest sent ripples of grief and disbelief across Philadelphia. People who'd never met Kada felt her loss like a personal wound. She wasn't just another headline. She was a reminder of how fragile safety can be, especially for women who find themselves entangled with someone they once trusted. Her co-workers struggled to process what happened. They remembered her laugh echoing down the halls of the care home, the way she always asked how everyone was doing. Now, her absence felt like an emptiness no one could fill. Her family, meanwhile, was caught between mourning and fighting. They wanted justice, not just for Kada, but for every woman who'd ever been ignored when she said she felt unsafe. In interviews, Her mother spoke directly to the camera. If someone is bothering you, harassing you, please don't keep it to yourself. Tell someone. Report it. My daughter thought she could handle it on her own, but that man wouldn't stop. Please don't wait until it's too late. Those words resonated far beyond their neighborhood. They became a cry for awareness, a call to action, because Kada's story wasn't just personal, it was universal. Within weeks, the tragedy sparked a wave of advocacy. Local organizations held seminars on domestic violence awareness, focusing on early signs of obsession and control. Police departments across the state began revisiting their procedures for handling harassment complaints. At a city council meeting, one community leader said, "Kada Scott's death should not be in vain. We owe it to her to create systems that protect women before it's too late." Murals appeared on city walls, portraits of Kada, surrounded by angel wings, painted with soft pinks and blues. Her name became a symbol, not just of loss, but of courage. When confronted with the evidence, Antonio's demeanor changed. Detectives later said it was as if the weight of the truth finally crushed the act he had been holding together. He lowered his head, whispered something barely audible, and began to cry. He confessed. According to his statement, he just wanted to talk. But when Kada refused to get back together, he claimed he snapped. It wasn't premeditated, he said. It was a mistake. But prosecutors saw it differently. They called it a calculated act of control, a deliberate decision made by a man who refused to accept rejection. And as they prepared for trial, the evidence was overwhelming. The messages, the surveillance footage, the GPS data, the confession. There was no escaping the truth. As the legal process dragged on, Kada's family lived in a limbo of grief and frustration. Every court appearance reopened the wound. Every hearing replayed the worst moments of her life in excruciating detail. Her mother said, "It's like we're forced to relive it every time we walk into that courtroom. But we do it because Kada deserves justice. She deserves to be remembered for her life, not her death." The emotional strain extended beyond the family. Her community began to reflect on the silent struggles so many endure, the ignored red flags, the normalization of possessive behavior, the "it's not that serious" mindset that too often precedes tragedy. Through all the revelations, the evidence, the confessions, the courtroom battles, one truth became impossible to ignore. Kada tried to move on. She tried to live freely. But she was trapped by someone who saw love as ownership. And when that illusion of control slipped away, he chose destruction over acceptance. That's the horror of her story. Not just what happened to her, but why. Because behind every act like this is a pattern of obsession disguised as affection, of control disguised as care. And if there's one thing Kada's story forces us to confront, it's this. Danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes, it comes from the people we once trusted most. As the trial loomed, Philadelphia braced itself for the final act, for the confrontation between justice and grief, between truth and denial. And for Kada's loved ones, it was no longer just about punishment. It was about peace, about reclaiming the narrative from tragedy and turning pain into purpose. When the trial began, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, supporters, and strangers who had followed the story from the start filled every seat. At the front, Kada's mother sat quietly, clutching her daughter's photo to her chest. The photo, a bright smile frozen in time, seemed to light the room even against the somber weight of what was being discussed. Antonio Brown sat just a few feet away, head lowered, wearing a suit that did little to hide the darkness of his choices. He avoided eye contact with Kada's family, though occasionally, his eyes would dart toward them, fleeting, empty, almost haunted. The prosecutor's words were sharp and deliberate. This was not a crime of passion. This was not a mistake. This was control, jealousy, and rage disguised as love. The jury listened intently as evidence poured out. The threatening messages, the GPS data, the confession. Kada's co-workers took the stand, describing how she'd seemed uneasy in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Her mother testified too, recalling the last time she heard her daughter's voice. She said Kada called her that morning just to say she loved her, something she didn't usually do before work. It's like she knew something was wrong. Her mother whispered, her voice trembling. The defense tried to paint Antonio as emotionally unstable, claiming he lost control after feeling abandoned. But the prosecution countered with cold facts, the calculated tracking, the obsessive messages, the rehearsed lies. There was no loss of control, they argued. It was deliberate, step by step, choice by choice. When Antonio's confession tape played, you could hear a collective intake of breath in the courtroom. His voice was quiet, almost calm, as he described confronting Kada that night. She didn't want to talk, he said. I just wanted her to listen. He paused before admitting that he lost it. But his version of losing control had ended with a young woman's life stolen and her future erased. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with a verdict, guilty on all counts. As the judge read the sentence, life imprisonment without parole, Antonio kept his head down. Kada's mother, sitting in the front row, closed her eyes and wept silently. It wasn't joy, and it wasn't relief. It was something deeper, the quiet exhale of a woman who had carried grief for too long and finally saw the system call it what it was, murder. Outside the courthouse, the crowd gathered as reporters surrounded the family. Kada's sister spoke briefly, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. We can't bring her back, but at least we know he'll never hurt anyone else. My sister was light. She didn't deserve to go through what she did, but her story will not die with her. It'll live through us. In the days following the verdict, social media flooded with tributes. The hashtag Justice for Kada Scott trended across the city. People who had never met her posted messages of solidarity and reflection. They spoke about the importance of recognizing the early signs of abuse, of listening to victims when they say they're scared. One user wrote, "We failed Kada when her cries for peace went unheard. We can't let that happen again." Her story inspired citywide conversations about intimate partner violence, about the way obsession can mask itself as love. Churches, community centers, and schools began hosting awareness seminars. Survivors came forward to share their experiences, many saying that Kada's story gave them the courage to finally speak up. Months later, Kada's family launched a foundation in her name, the Kada Scott Foundation for Women's Safety. Its mission was simple but profound, to provide resources, counseling, and immediate assistance to women trying to leave controlling or abusive relationships. Her mother said it best during the launch ceremony. If we can save even one woman, one daughter, from going through what Kada did, then her life still has purpose. But even as the world moved on, the pain never truly left. Her family's home still had her pictures on the wall, her graduation photo, her birthday smile, her baby pictures. Her room remained untouched, as if she might walk in at any moment. Her mother would sometimes sit on her bed and talk to her. "I know you're at peace now," she would say. "I just wish I could have held you one more time." For the community, Kada's case became more than a headline. It became a mirror, reflecting how society often overlooks warning signs until it's too late. The young woman who once worked double shifts to take care of her family was now the face of a movement for awareness and accountability. And maybe that's the truest form of justice, not just seeing her killer behind bars, but seeing her story ignite change. Because when you strip away the headlines, the courtroom drama, and the investigations, what remains is heartbreak, the kind that lingers quietly in the spaces where laughter used to be. Kada was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a light snuffed out too soon. Her story reminds us that love should never hurt, that obsession is not affection, and that silence can be deadly. It reminds us that paying attention to the small red flags, to the whispered fears, can be the difference between life and tragedy. So as you finish watching this video, take a moment. Think about the people in your life. If someone you love seems distant, scared, or trapped, reach out. Don't wait for the signs to become screams. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, please contact your local authorities or call a support hotline. Help is out there. Kada's story shouldn't just make us sad. It should make us act. Because real change doesn't come from sympathy. It comes from awareness, from speaking up, from standing beside those who need it most. If this story moved you, please share it. Not for views, but for voices. So that Kada Scott and every woman like her is never forgotten. This is not just true crime. This is real life. And every share, every comment, every conversation is one step closer to ensuring it doesn't happen again. Like, subscribe, and keep spreading awareness, because together, we can be the voice for those who can't speak anymore.